was driving back home after visiting my sister, who lives a few states away. It was a long drive, about 10 hours, and I'd left her place late in the afternoon, which meant most of my journey would be in the dark. I didn't mind though. I've always enjoyed nighttime drives. There's something calming about the empty roads and the soft hum of the engine. But that night, something was different. I was about 5 hours into the drive, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by dense trees on either side. The glow of my headlights barely illuminated beyond a few feet in front of me, and the occasional car passing by was a brief reminder that I wasn't completely alone. Around 1 a.m., I started feeling the exhaustion hit. My eyelids grew heavy, and I knew I had to pull over before I drifted off behind the wheel. Luckily, a rest stop sign appeared a few miles ahead. The place was nearly deserted. Just a few trucks parked in the lot, their drivers most likely asleep in their cabs. I parked near the restrooms, deciding to stretch my legs and splash some water on my face to wake myself up. The air was cool, almost too cold for that time of year. I remember pulling my jacket tighter around me as I walked toward the restroom. That's when I noticed him, a man standing near the vending machines. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring at the machine like he couldn't decide what to get. But something about him felt off. He was dressed in old clothes, a faded flannel shirt, and jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His hair was long and unkempt, and even from a distance, I could see his eyes were wrong. They looked almost hollow, like he was looking through everything around him, rather than at it. I tried not to make eye contact as I walked past him, but I could feel his gaze follow me. Inside the restroom, I took my time. I figured he'd be gone by the time I came out, but when I stepped back outside, he was still there. This time, he wasn't by the vending machines. He was standing near my car. I froze for a second, unsure of what to do. I wasn't about to confront some random guy in the middle of the night, but I also didn't want to walk straight to my car and let him know which one was mine. So, I decided to wait. I leaned against the wall near the restroom, pretending to check my phone. That's when I noticed something even stranger. There was no car nearby that he could have come from. The lot was mostly empty, and I had been the only one to pull into that section of the rest stop. I looked around, trying to figure out where he could have come from. Maybe he was hitchhiking, but that didn't explain the way he was just there. After a few minutes, I glanced back at him. He was gone. Relieved, I started walking toward my car, but as I got closer, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The driver's side door was slightly open. I know for a fact I had locked it when I got out. I'm always paranoid about that, especially when I'm traveling alone. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there, staring at the door. I took a step closer, peering inside. The interior looked the same. Nothing seemed out of place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I debated whether I should get in or go back to the rest stop and call for help. But who was I going to call? The place was practically abandoned. I decided to get in and lock the doors. I figured I'd drive to the next gas station and stop somewhere safer. As soon as I closed the door and locked it, I felt it, a shift, like I wasn't alone. My hands were shaking as I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and for a brief moment, I felt a wave of relief. But then, in the rearview mirror, I saw it, a face. It was barely visible, just a shadowy reflection in the back seat, but I knew it was him, the man from the vending machines. I didn't think. I slammed the car into reverse, my tires screeching against the pavement as I backed out of the space. I didn't care if I hit anything. I just needed to get out of there. I swerved onto the highway, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the sound of the engine. I drove for miles before I dared to look in the back seat again. Empty. But I didn't stop. I didn't pull over until I reached a brightly lit gas station with security cameras and other people around. I checked the back seat again, checked the trunk, nothing. But here's the thing, when I finally got home and unloaded my stuff, I found something I know I didn't put there. A single dirty coin. It was sitting on the back seat, right where I had seen that face in the mirror. I don't know where it came from, and I don't want to know, but I haven't stopped locking my doors since, and I never ever stop at rest stops anymore. When I first moved into my apartment complex, I liked how quiet it was. It was one of those older buildings, but it had character. The neighbors kept to themselves, which was fine by me. I wasn't looking to make friends. I just wanted peace and quiet after a long day at work. My apartment was on the second floor, near the end of the hallway. Across from me was 2B, an apartment that had been empty for months, or at least, that's what I thought. About a month after I moved in, I started noticing little things. The door to 2B, which had always been closed, would be slightly open when I came home. Just a crack. I didn't think much of it at first. Figured maybe the maintenance guy was doing some work in there. But then it kept happening. Every few days, I'd come home, and the door would be open just enough to see the darkness inside. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I pushed the door open. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. Just bare walls and dusty floors. The air felt stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in a long time. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. On the far wall, near the kitchen, were smudges, fingerprints, like someone had been touching the wall over and over again, in the same spot. I didn't stay to investigate. I locked the door and left, telling myself it was just my imagination. But things got worse. A few nights later, I was in bed when I heard something. It was faint, almost like it was coming from inside the walls. I sat up, listening closely. It was coming from 2B. I told myself it was just the pipes, or maybe the building settling. But then I heard it again. This time, closer, like it was coming from just behind my bedroom wall. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I talked to the building manager. I asked if anyone had moved into 2B recently. He gave me a strange look. No one's lived in that unit for over a year, he said. I told him what I'd heard, but he just brushed it off. Old building, weird noises. I tried to believe that. I really did, but things escalated. One night, I came home late, after work. The hallway was dim, as usual, but when I walked past 2B, the door was wide open. This time, I felt that same pull of curiosity, but stronger. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, almost suffocating. I could feel the chill on my skin. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The fingerprints were still there, but now, there were more of them. And then, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the dust on the floor were footprints, bare footprints, leading from the door to the corner of the living room. But they didn't lead back. It was like someone had walked into the apartment and never left. My instinct screamed at me to get out. But as I turned to leave, I heard it, a soft whisper, "Help me." I froze. The voice was so faint, barely above a breath, but it was right next to me. I didn't wait to hear more. I ran out of that apartment, slammed the door shut, and locked myself inside my own unit. I barely slept that night, but the worst part, the next morning, when I went to leave for work, the door to 2B was open again. I avoided that apartment as much as I could after that. I stopped looking at it, stopped thinking about it. But then, about a week later, something even stranger happened. I was getting ready for bed. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman standing there. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with long dark hair and pale skin, but something was off. Her eyes looked distant, almost unfocused. "Can I help you?" I asked through the door, my heart pounding. She didn't respond. She just stood there. "Are you okay?" Finally she spoke. "Have you seen him?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it echoed through the silence. "Who?" I asked, my throat dry. She blinked slowly, and for a moment, I thought I saw something behind her, a shadow. Then just as suddenly as she appeared, she turned and walked down the hall. But when I opened the door to get a better look, she was gone, vanished. I never saw her again. I was visiting my cousin David, who had just bought a small house on the outskirts of town. It was an older place, built sometime in the early 60s, but it was cheap, and he was excited to fix it up. I hadn't seen David in a while, and he invited me to stay the weekend to check out the place and catch up. I thought it would be a nice change of pace, so I agreed. The house was a single-story ranch-style home, with a wide front yard and a dense patch of woods stretching along the back. It had this quiet, almost eerie charm to it. David greeted me at the door with a big grin and a cold beer, and we spent most of the afternoon talking about life, work, and everything in between. As the sun went down, we decided to hang out in the backyard. He had a little fire pit set up and a few chairs. The woods behind his house were dense, almost unnervingly so. You couldn't see more than a few feet into them before everything was swallowed by darkness. We sat by the fire, swapping stories and laughing, when David casually mentioned something that made me pause. "You know," he said, poking at the fire with a stick, "sometimes I hear weird noises coming from the woods at night, like footsteps or, I don't know, whispers." I laughed it off, thinking he was just trying to mess with me. "Come on, man," I said. "Don't try to freak me out already." David shrugged. "I'm serious," he said. "It's probably nothing, maybe animals, but sometimes it feels like someone's watching." The way he said it made me feel uneasy, but I brushed it off. We finished a couple more beers, and before long, we decided to call it a night. David offered me the guest room, which was just down the hall from his. The room was small but cozy, with a single bed and a window that looked out toward the woods. I was exhausted from the drive, so I didn't think twice before crashing. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling for a bit, listening to the stillness of the house. But that's when I heard it. First, it was faint, like the sound of leaves rustling. I figured it was just the wind, but then I heard it again. Footsteps. I sat up, my heart pounding. The sound was coming from outside, near the woods. I told myself it had to be an animal, maybe a deer wandering close to the house. But something about the pace of those footsteps, it felt too controlled. I pulled the blanket tighter around me and tried to ignore it. But then I heard something else, a voice. It was distant, but I swear it sounded like someone whispering my name. I froze. My mind was racing. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the beer was messing with my head. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. "Come outside," the voice whispered. My blood ran cold. I couldn't move. I sat there, gripping the sheets, listening to the silence that followed. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but eventually, I convinced myself it was just my imagination. I lay back down and forced myself to sleep. I woke up sometime later, though I wasn't sure what had stirred me. The room was quiet, but I felt off, like something wasn't right. Turned my head toward the window, and that's when I saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the woods. At first I thought it was just a shadow, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was someone tall, thin, standing completely still. It wasn't moving, it was just watching. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to call out for David, but my voice was caught in my throat. I stared at the figure, willing it to move, to disappear, but it didn't. And then, it did. It took a step forward. That's when I lost it. I jumped out of bed, ran down the hall, and banged on David's door. He opened it, half asleep, and I told him what I saw. "Someone's out there," I said, barely able to get the words out. David grabbed a flashlight, and we both went to the back door. I didn't want to go outside, but David insisted we check it out. The night was dead silent. The fire pit was just a pile of dying embers now, and the woods were completely still. David shined the flashlight toward the tree line, but there was nothing. "No one's here, man," he said, his voice low. Then we heard it, a branch snapping, followed by something moving fast. "Get inside," David whispered, and we bolted back into the house, locking every door and window. Neither of us slept much that night. In the morning, we went back out to check the yard, and that's when we saw them. Footprints, leading from the woods to just beneath my window. We never figured out who or what it was. David thought maybe someone had been scoping out the house, but I wasn't so sure. That thing I saw, it wasn't normal. After that weekend, I didn't visit David's place again. He moved out a few months later, said the house didn't feel right anymore. And honestly, I don't blame him, because whatever was out there that night, it wasn't just watching, it was waiting.